So today on Twitter I tweeted, am I alone in thinking that enlightenment is just a nepotistic boys club based loosely around unusual psychological experiences? It's a little bit provocative, and I do realise I'm being a bit mischievous, but I think there's a serious point there, and I'm mostly it's about me feeling like, well, maybe I'm a little bit alone in this idea of mine, and it's something I feel quite strongly about. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be many other people who share the same ideas as me. Like to basically maybe outline it a little bit more. Is this the basic idea is that I totally appreciate the significance of spiritual experience. I'm not denying that, and I think people have very life-changing spiritual experiences, and I think they're very valid. So I'm not criticising that. Simply, what I'm pointing at is that, and I think this is something else that we can all agree on, is that there is a broad spectrum of spiritual experience. Right from the simple bringing one's awareness to the present moment, and opening up to the immediacy of sensual experience. That experience of just being awake to the sheer uncanniness that there is anything at all, and that's something that we always have instant access to. That kind of exercise might not dramatically change our life, but nevertheless we can evoke a simple spiritual experience, if you like, quite easily, and we can go right from that to the other end of the spectrum, to profound insights into the emptiness of existence, that last days and that totally turn our world upside down and make us never the same again. So we have this spectrum, and I think that's something we can all agree on. And this is what I understand from the prevailing kind of spiritual teaching, the kind of spiritual ideas out there, is that there is a line on that spectrum, and above that line we call those experiences enlightenment experiences, and below that line we say they are just spiritual experiences that can't be classified as classical awakening or enlightenment. And also the impression that I get is that there is this kind of acceptance. Well, maybe there's not a universal kind of empirical acceptance of the position of this line, but that we're beginning to go in that direction. I suspect this is where it connects to the nepotism, and by nepotism I mean what nepotism comes from. My understanding is from when you get a privileged position or a job or something, simply because you know someone else. So it's not on the merits of your skills. It's simply because you're friends with someone else. And that's an exaggeration of the Enlightenment scene. But I guess what I'm trying to point towards is that this line, this mark in the spectrum of spiritual experience, hasn't been scientifically put there in an empirical way. Its position hasn't been proven. Its position is largely determined by groups of people who have had experiences within the vicinity of that line, and it is up to them to decide whether someone is enlightened. Or you might feel yourself that you've had an experience on this spectrum and that it falls above the line. I mean, again, it's arbitrary, that there's no universally accepted position for this line. I mean, is that, I mean, am I talking about something crazy that hasn't been talked about? I mean, because to me, I don't think that there is something that we can all agree on and call enlightenment. I think that's a pretty basic thing which isn't really discussed and expressed enough. That we really don't know what enlightenment is. But and so I think it's really important to not talk about it in ways that there is somehow a universally accepted definition for enlightenment outside of a small group of people who have decided where the line for enlightenment is. And I think what this means is that there's very little to actually look forward to or hold on to. This idea that there is something, that there is this, that the universe has created in the same way that it's created galaxies and planets, it's created the possibility of achieving enlightenment. That is not something the universe has created. That is, to my mind, and this is largely male, although I do accept there are a lot of female, largely male created phenomenon. To my mind, enlightenment is just, it's conceptual. It's just a made-up thing that certain groups of people have decided exists. And I think the reality is that it's a lot more ambiguous than that. It's a lot more dirty than that. The spectrum is wide open, and I don't think there is any fundamentally agreed position for the line of enlightenment. And I think this needs to be expressed, because I think this leaves us in a very exposed position. There is not this thing that we can get to and achieve and go, yes, I have made it. I can now rely on this thing that I have achieved to grant me some measure of protection from suffering. This really isn't the case. You may or may not be enlightened. Your experience may or may not be enlightening. But the fact remains, and this is the point, is that we don't actually need this line, because even the person who has had that experience at the highest end of the spectrum can still experience the most acute and desperate suffering. And they need friendship, and openness, and humility just as much as anybody else. So that's my point. I mean, yeah, I'd like to know, like, kind of where I sit, I guess. I mean, are my ideas a little bit out there, or is there a kind of are there other people out there who kind of have the same feelings as me? All right, yeah. Let me know. Thanks very much. Yeah.